Hello and good afternoon and welcome back into studio. And now on Zoom, we are doing an interview with Noel Cunningham, who is a very much loved Donegal icon from Harvey's Point Hotel. Hello, Noel.
And a very good afternoon, or I should say now, good evening. And this is such a lovely event, and I am so delighted to be part of it. And I sincerely hope that the Coombe, the lovely, wonderful team at the Coombe benefits so much. And what a great idea to do this.
Thank you, Noel. We're having lots of fun here in studio and it's a steep learning curve, but we're learning all the time. So it's been really good. And as people know, we've hit the 30,000 mark and maybe a bit more. They're still doing maths in the background. So it's going well so far.
Isn't that marvelous? And you think you're having fun in the sort of getting the studio things sorted out. I was looking for hair and makeup here in the wilds of Donegal, but not possible.
We should have sent Lisa from Zinc. She was just on. We should have sent her up with you.
Absolutely.
Herself and Adele are after disappearing there to have a cup of tea and a break after all their hard chat. So I got to talk to you, which is great because, as you know, when I first rang you, Noel, you were my mammy's hero. She used to love watching you on the telly and getting the gossip on the royalty in England. So tell us the latest gossip on the English royalty.
Well, you know, I was, and I say fortunate, I was very fortunate to meet Diana, the Princess of Wales. I had a particular fondness for her because I always described her as that beautiful bird that flew with a broken wing. And she is such an iconic individual, even to this day. And what she did in terms of bringing a certain kind of reality to the royal family was very powerful. You know, she brought her boys out to homeless centres. She brought them around the streets of London to visit people who were homeless. She actually brought them to drug facilities. She was the first real prominent person to actually go into a house where AIDS people lived, AIDS patients, and she touched them and shook their hand and embraced them. So all powerful messages, absolutely. And I have to say, and I never gossip, and I always like to see the good in people, but I am particularly sad at the moment to see that her two lovely sons, both of whom I've met, are somewhat estranged. And now there's a book that's being serialized this weekend in the Sunday Times and in the London Times yesterday. And it's chronicling sort of the life of Meghan and Harry from the moment she became part of the royal family. And it's titled Finding Freedom. And it makes for sad reading, really, because it's very clear from the book, whatever sort of facts may have been slightly altered, that there is a rift between the two boys, that Meghan, perhaps to be entirely fair to her, was sort of a little bit cold-shouldered. And one would say that she sort of deserved that insofar as she should have known, even though she was a Hollywood actress and used to the public spotlight, she should have realized that going into the royal family was a different situation altogether, that spotlight, that goldfish bowl is enormous. And the royal family, it's like the government is run by civil servants at times. The royal family are managed by courtiers and what Diana called the men in grey suits. And they are a difficult group of people to get on side with. And I think perhaps Meghan fell foul of that. But it's very sad because now he and his brother and their wives, of course, and their children are estranged. They live in a different country. I'm sure Harry's finding that rather strange and is probably a little lonely as well for the life he knew with his brother, with his father, with his grandfather. He adores the Queen, his grandmother. So that is life, I suppose, but it's very sad.
It is, absolutely. And I suppose we're Zooming now, so maybe he's able to Zoom in with his family. I know it was quite controversial around the time of my friends chatting about whether they were doing the right thing or not leaving. But do you think that was kind of history repeating itself?
To an extent, yes, because people forget Harry has had that most dreadful tragedy in his life when his mother was killed so publicly. His life played out on sort of the most public platform, the most public stage. He and his brother walked after their mother's coffin with billions of people watching from around the world. It was traumatic. And the boy, by his own admission, has suffered greatly mentally since that event. And I just feel that somehow or other, the support of his brother, whom he adores, would have been something that would sustain him. And now it's as if, a bit like Diana, she was sort of the outsider to an extent as well. Now he's just seems somewhat isolated in the United States. And I'm not sure Hollywood, Los Angeles, that lifestyle is really Harry. But I just hope that he finds peace, that he finds a sort of contentment in his life in America, and that he finds a good cause that he can devote himself to that will bring some peace and some happiness.
It's always good to devote yourself to a good cause, Noel.
Absolutely. As in, friends of the Coon, please donate today.
Good man. And Noel, tell me, if I was to, or Adele was to interview the Queen next year, what way would we address her?
Well, you would address her, of course, as Your Majesty, and thereafter, Ma'am. And she's a surprisingly easy person to talk to. You have to allow the Queen to lead the conversation. I have been cheeky in the past. I've met her on a number of occasions. Once famously, which I've written about in my book, Noel Cunningham's Guide to Modern Irish Manners. I met her at Royal Ascot, and I was very fortunate because the then ambassador always gave me a card for admission to the royal enclosure. And she was going down to the paddock, and I happened to be coming back from the paddock, and she was with her mother, and they fell into step with me, and we chatted, and she was gracious and lovely. And the Queen Mother gave me a bet on a horse. And later on in the evening, when their cars were called, I just happened to be coming up the steps as they were coming down to get into their car. And naturally enough, you stand aside, you doff your hat, you allow them to pass, and they got into the car. And the Queen spotted me, and she was in the car with her mother, and she put down the window using a little button, and she said, "Well," and I said, "Well, Mom." She said, "The horse." I said, "Still running, Mom." And she said, "I could have told you, never take a bet on a horse from my mother." And we laughed. It was really that's the kind of woman she is. She's gracious. Her manners are impeccable. She has been on the world stage for the last forever. She has met every head of state and every prominent person in the world for the past 75 years. She's an extraordinary lady. And I am not an apologist, or I'm not trying to make a case for royalty or whatever. I just think that she's a marvelous lady. And of course, I wish we had a similar family in Ireland, because what they do for tourism and hospitality is amazing. I would never have to worry about people coming to Harvey's Point again if we had a royal family, because people go to Britain from the United States and from Europe because they want to see the changing of the guard. They hope to catch a glimpse of one of the royal family. They want to be in England, particularly in June and this time of the year when all the season is on, where you have the tennis, you have the racing at Ascot, you have the polo. They are all called the season events, and the royals always attend. So they're a great asset to the United Kingdom.
And if I was meeting her in person, what would I do? Just getting ready, like.
Getting ready, well, it depends on the situation, because remember, you will be led by whatever the situation is. You are not just going to pitch up in your sort of a car and say, "Hi, I'm here to see the Queen." And you don't just go in and say, "Hi, Queen, will we have a cuppa? Will I put the kettle on?" It's all very formal, very prearranged, very organized to the last detail. I remember all those years ago when I was starting out in my career, when she would come to our hotel, which she came to occasionally in Grosvenor House in London, you would get instructions as to where the car would park, where she would step down from the car, and we would have to measure out the number of footsteps it took to get from there to the point where she'd be introduced to whoever it was, so that the Queen had all that detail in advance. So that's how organized it is. And I have to say, when our president was invited back to London for the return visit, because the Queen had such a lovely visit to Ireland, it was a great honor, and people may not realize that the president was afforded the very special privilege of staying at Windsor. Normally, heads of state would stay either in their own embassies or at best in Buckingham Palace. But to be invited to Windsor is very special. And that's reserved only for heads of state who are royal, who are friends of the royal family. And it was a great, great privilege. And Michael D and his wife, who are so elegant, so charming, and so fabulous, they deserved it. And of course, their manners and decorum is beyond question. We're very lucky to have such a dignified couple representing us.
Do you have a favourite castle or home of the Queen?
That is, well, Sandringham, she loves Sandringham House in Norfolk. She goes to Balmoral for Christmas because her father, her late father and grandfather loved Balmoral. They like the wild open spaces, the highlands. They can shoot, they can have their grouse parties, they can have house guests, and they're not under the spotlight because it's very private. But her favorite residence is Windsor.
And Noel, tell me, we have COVID now, so we can't greet people the way we normally would. We're not even allowed to shake hands, which can be quite hard. How do we deal with that now with thought to etiquette?
Yeah, it's very difficult, but sometimes it's good to remember, and again in my book, I refer to different forms of greeting. And we as Irish people, we're not used to not greeting people with a hug or with, touch, handshake, or, some warmth by touch. So it's a very strange place we find ourselves in. Now, other countries would find the way we do greeting quite unacceptable. And of course, in the Muslim world, for example, you as a female, I would never touch you. I would never greet you with warmth or with affection in public. In fact, it would be unlikely that I would meet you in public unless you were my friend or married to one of my friends. But I quite like the idea of just in the absence of the handshake or the hug, that we go sort of almost like Japanese or indeed Muslim when you're meeting Muslim, that slight bow or, just incline the head or even to touch your heart, so that I meet you, and the elbow, touching this elbow is, vulgar. I hate it. I loathe it, to see grown men and they're doing this thing with the elbow. I think, yuck, yuck, yuck. But just to graciously, make a prayer sign and incline your head or hand on the heart, it's lovely. But we miss the touch as human beings during lockdown, the magic of meeting our family and being close to people. And sort of if you had children or grandchildren who weren't allowed to visit, just all of those things we took for granted, that my nephews and nieces would come to my house and, you'd have a big hug. I'm a great hugger. And I see my sisters, one of my sisters who has grandchildren. I mean, if she was unable to hug her grandchildren very much longer, I don't know what she'd have done, because she missed that so much. So that's a part of COVID we will have to live with. And truth be told, we might almost get out of the habit of hugging. We might get out of the habit of those ways of greeting that we were used to. I always thought that kissing in public was a little bit, overdone, because why would we meet a complete stranger at a function and feel that it's all right to kiss them. And I always think, of New Year's Eve. It was the one evening, if I wasn't working, that I would never go out, because you saw these black strangers making a beeline for you like exocet missiles to, to plant a huge slabbery kiss on your lips. And I think, hang on a minute, yuck, these are strangers, I don't know you. Now I love greeting my family and my friends with a kiss. Now some of the boys do find that a little bit uncomfortable in Ireland, but I spent a lot of time abroad. I spent a lot of time in Europe, where it was quite acceptable with your male friends to kiss them without any kind of sexual innuendo or suggestion implied, So it's a changing landscape, changing way of doing things, but like everything, we'll adapt. But what is most important, if it's a handshake, if it's a hug, if it's the sign of sort of the prayer sign or hand on your heart, the most important thing is that you look at people straight in the eye. You engage, you look at them. I always find in showbiz circles, the people I love in showbiz are the people that when you meet them, they are present to you, that they're not looking over their shoulder to see if there's somebody much more interesting in their perception or much more exciting in their perception to talk to. So they're kind of giving you this half-hearted, oh, hello, kiss, kiss, and they're looking over their shoulder. Oh, most annoying.
And it's funny, I'm surrounded by people in masks at the moment, all looking at me, and all I can see is their eyes. But it's funny, I could, you can see the little bit of devilment in one person's eyes, and someone else is concentrating innately with time, and you can read them very well. And you're right, by looking straight into their eyes, you can actually get so much out of them as well. And the fact that you're engaged, I think I just disappeared there for a second. The fact that you're engaged with them as well is really good. Give me a 1 minute, yes, no, do, don't, do I in wedding etiquette?
Yes.
What?
Oh, you want me to just...
Yeah, give me the 60 seconds of what I should and shouldn't do, or what a man should and shouldn't do. What are the big faux pas if somebody's getting married?
The big faux pas are, the first thing I say, everything to do with the wedding, to the girl in particular, enjoy it. Right from the get-go, make an effort to enjoy it. Don't get all stressed. Don't get all wound up. Don't listen to the world and his wife. Do it your way. Lay down very clearly what you want done and by whom. If, for example, I want help from my mum or my sister, if I want help from whoever, I must ask them, and tell them that is their role. And sometimes, which is so sad, the mother of the groom can be forgotten. So involve the mother of the groom as well. And of course, now with same-sex marriages, we have to be ever more cautious about how we sort of deal with people. And if a same-sex couple arrive at Harvey's Point to arrange their wedding, I have to remember that they are on equal footing, that it's their wedding. Whereas when a man and woman pitch up for the wedding, I just say to the guy, all you have to do now from now on is say, yes, dear, whatever you want, but it's quite different the other way. The other thing is, be careful about invite people you want to be at the wedding. Be careful about table plans. Don't introduce a problem situation where family members that you absolutely know don't get on, that you plonk them all at the same table together. So that's another important thing. Don't decide to have, a long period before you sit down for dinner, because when people arrive at a hotel or a venue, they want something to eat.
And that's very important, because I've actually been at weddings where you're kind of sitting there and you're waiting. And Noel, if we want any more information, what is the name of your book? And we have one to give away next week as well, but what's the name of the book that we can go out and buy and get all that information from?
That information, I have a great section on weddings, the do's, the don'ts, how to do it properly. Noel Cunningham's Guide to Modern Irish Manners, and it's available in all good bookstores. and it's also, of course, from O'Brien Press.
Good man. And you've also given us a weekend away to give away, which is on Aisling Larkin's Instagram post at the moment, and we'll call a winner on that tomorrow. And we are heading over to Gourmet Food Parlour now to have a whole, I'm going to let you find out yourself what that one's about. Thank you, Noel, so much.
It's an absolute pleasure. I hope that people keep donating to Friends of the Coombe Hospital. It would be lovely to get the total amount up further. And you know what? Irish people are fabulous. They are so kind. And when you go out and ask for a special cause, they respond positively. I'm involved as patron with 2 major charities, and I am always overwhelmed with generosity of people. So a big thank you to those who have donated. To those who haven't, there's loads of time to do it. And once again, thank you for asking me to be part of this.
Thank you, Noel.